Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. Update 45 was released today, which is February 12th, 2020, and I want to just go over all the stuff that has changed since preview. I originally was going to go over all the release notes, but then I quickly realized that hey, I've already done videos on all that stuff. I've covered everything in Update 45 almost except for the loot and the Knights of the Chalice changes, but I believe everything else I've covered and done videos on. So below in the description to this video, over here on YouTube, I will link all those videos. So instead of me going over the entire release notes and repeating everything I've already said, you can just watch those videos below. And in this video, I'm going to go through things again that have changed since preview. So things that are new since the last videos I've done. So changes they've made. And if you want to know just the general thing that has happened with Update 45, but before I get into that, basically, if you haven't been paying attention to the news and stuff, in Update 45, we essentially got a new class, Alchemist. We got two epified quest packs, Epic Delirious Tomb and Epic Catacombs. And we got probably the biggest thing, well, probably not the biggest thing, probably the class is the biggest thing, but we got tons of huge balance changes in this update. And the release notes, if you've looked at them, are just humongous. They're so long. So we got that. We also got the anniversary event. And we got another thing, which is the 64-bit client beta, which also came with this update. So that's available right now. You can go play DDO with 64-bit. I know some people are having some problems with that, but if you don't know what 64-bit is, essentially you can use, it lets you use more than 4 gigs of RAM to run the game, essentially. Is what it does. So if you have more than 4 gigs of RAM, try it out and see if it helps. See if it helps the game run smoother. Even if you don't have more than 4 gigs, maybe try it out anyways. But I think that's all of just the general things. So if you just wanted to watch this video to know what Update 45 gave you, then there you go. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into all the changes. So they changed a lot of stuff based on feedback. And I normally, as I said in some of the prior videos, is they normally don't make a lot of changes in preview. And this time they did. They really did. I mean, some stuff that players really complained about, like improved precise shot changes, they didn't change. They held their ground on that. But some stuff they did change, like Archer's focus. They made huge changes to make the two-handed fighting changes way better, because a lot of feedback was saying that it was not as good, and that's actually what we're going to get into first. But on the forums here, it's been hard to compilate all the changes, because while they've compilated everything in the release notes, of course, all the little changes since preview, they've kind of spread around in different threads, and it's been hard to kind of find all of it. But I think I've grabbed all the different threads, and I'll just try to compile it all into this video. So, all right, so here's one thread, and I'll be skipping through a couple of them here. But this is a thread they released a couple weeks ago called Changes on Preview 2 Feedback. So we can go ahead and look at this thread first and start talking about all the various changes. All right, so we can just go ahead and scroll down here. So two-handed fighting is the first. So two-handed fighting. So this is what Kokuma Jobo had to say, a developer. He said it was clear that we had undershot the two-handed fighting overhaul in a couple of areas when they first presented it on Lamania. We undershot and backloaded the strike-through values, so it wasn't that fun to hit one, maybe 2 enemies into high level, or you would then hit 2, maybe 3 enemies. The ripple effect of losing glancing blows was felt heavily for hand-and-a-half wielders and bears. So essentially what that means is, before the original presentation for the strike-through, is that you could hit a max of two players or 2 enemies. So when you had, actually you could hit a max of 3, but the base strike through stuff, it just didn't let you hit enough enemies, and players felt that was kind of missing the point of a new mechanic that's supposed to make them kind of the king of melee AoE. So they've expanded this to make you be able to hit more enemies, and they've also just made it stronger in general. So here's the specific changes. Changes from Preview 2. Characters no longer require the feat two-handed fighting in order to be able to strike through while moving. So before, in Preview, as originally presented, you could not strike through while moving unless you took the first two-handed fighting feat. Now everyone can do that, so that's nice. It helps more maybe at lower levels and things for builds that have until they can take that feat, and maybe for some that are just maybe meleeing at low levels, they can take advantage of strike through, even non-melee classes at very low levels. As the moving restriction on strike through has been removed, the dwarf skill we previewed has been removed as well. Okay, so that makes sense. The cap on strike through is now at 5 at 400%. So they've increased that a lot. So you can now get up to the cap. The most you can strike through now is 5 enemies. So 400%. Okay, and they've also increased the amount of strike through that the feats gave you. So before, the way it worked is you had a base of 20% strike through that you would get, and then for each of the two-handed fighting feats, you would get an additional 20% that would stack up to 100%. So if you had all 4 of the two-handed fighting feats, you would get basically 100% strike through, which would mean you would get a guaranteed hit on 2 targets, essentially. So the way this works now is you get even more. So the way it works is two-handed fighting feat gives you 60 and each additional gives you 30. So that gives you a new total of 150. So that's 50% more strike through you get just from taking the feats than what was presented on preview. In addition to that, there are a ton of other enhancements in various trees that you can use, of course, to get your strike through higher. I don't know if there's any items right now, but I imagine that might be something they'll add later. But as far as I know, they haven't done any of that yet. Okay, so another change that they've made is they've increased the base damage, and I'm going to flip over to another forum thread here. Okay, they've increased the base damage for two-handed fighting, so as you can see here in the blue text for each feat. So the first feat, while using a two-handed weapon, your ability score bonus to damage improves to 2 times the ability score you use for damage. So that's been increased to 2 for the first feat, 2.5 for the second feat, and 3 times for the third two-handed fighting feat in that line. So essentially that means that your single target DPS is better than what was presented on preview. The reason they've increased this is because with glancing blows being removed from the game, your single target DPS would drop without this. So glancing blows affected your primary target, whereas strike through does not, because strike through is just a mechanic that lets you get an additional hit. So that's why they basically changed this. So they wanted to make sure that with your single target DPS, it doesn't drop. So they've increased it even more than it was presented prior. So that's really good. It's another buff. Okay, in addition, there are a lot of tactical abilities and other abilities that can now use strike through. So look at this list here: Smite Evil, Exalted Smite, Hamstring, Sap, Slicing Blow, Sunder, Improved Sunder, Trip, Improved Trip, and Stunning Blow has been modified to allow strike through. So that's huge. You can now hit enemy like more than one enemy with these effects. So like Stunning Blow, you can hit more than one enemy now. That's huge. That's really, really good, particularly at like heroic levels. That's really, really awesome. And a lot of these, it's going to be really helpful because they can now use strike through. So that's good. Okay, now flipping back over to the other forum thread. Okay, now moving on to some other miscellaneous changes in the same thread that they've talked about here. So Paladins. So Paladins got a new spell called Righteous Command, which is +1 morale bonus to melee and range power per caster levels. Max caster level 15. So level 15 and above, that's an additional 15 melee power. So that's great. That's awesome, obviously. So Paladin got a little more love. Alchemist. Okay, Alchemist got a few changes. One of the complaints I saw is that people were concerned that Biochemist was going to be overpowered when combined with Inquisitive. So they've made some changes. I've read through these changes and compared them to other changes. I'm not really seeing, unless someone tell me if I'm missing something, I'm not really seeing any huge like nerfs here. So someone let me know. But they've kind of modified the way that the poison damage works and what enemies are vulnerable to poison, things like that. So you all let me know. I'm not seeing a huge nerf there from what was on live. But, again, you all let me know. Okay. Because, yeah, it's supposed to be a nerf. Apparently, people were saying it was a nerf. The developers first presented it as, hey, Alchemist in this area for Biochemist has been seen as too strong. They actually wrote this on another thread, which I won't bother showing you. But they basically said that we made some changes based on that. But I'm not really seeing the nerfs. But, again, you guys tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, next, gigantic change. So they have they made cleaves way better. So another miscellaneous change. Cleave, Great Cleave, Supreme Cleave, Whirlwind Attack can now double strike. That's amazing. Cleaves could not double strike before. Now they can double strike. So cleaves are a lot better from that. In addition to that, cleaves, great cleave, supreme cleave, whirlwind attack, Knights of the Chalice cleave enhancements, smite evil, exalted smite are now affected by your attack speed. So, and they've apparently modified the animation sum so it's faster. So they're now affected by your attack speed, and the animation apparently has been changed a bit. So they should be a lot faster. So, you know, I haven't gotten a chance to go on live yet. I'm going to play after I record this video, actually, but I haven't gotten a chance yet to see the attack speed today, but I will find out later. So hopefully it's a lot better. I mean, I don't know. It could be a lot better, or it could not even be noticeable. I don't know yet. I'll find out when I play. Okay, let's move on to the next thread with a couple of other huge changes. Okay, so this is a thread they put out a couple weeks ago with Preview 2. So this is a change they made from Preview 1 to Preview 2, and it's to Divine Might. All instances of Divine Might, Cleric, Favored Soul, and Paladin are now Battle Trance. You gain an insight bonus to attack, damage, and DCs of tactical feats equal to 1/2 your Charisma modifier for 30, 60, and 120 seconds, depending on how many per rank, basically how many points you put into it. So this is actually, let's read the next line first. War Soul's Divine Will is now Battle Trance. You get an insight bonus to attack, damage, and DC of tactical feats equal to 1/2 your Wisdom modifier for 30, 60, 120 seconds. Divine Might, Divine Will, Harpers Know the Angles, and Falconry's Deadly Instinct damage components now provide actual insight bonus to damage, meaning they all provide damage to both melee and range attacks. They do not stack with other insight bonuses, and so on. I don't think, the ones that provide attack do not stack with other. Okay, so that's fine. But the big change here is right here. So Divine Might, this is a big nerf actually for a lot of melee strength-based builds, because the way Divine Might worked before, for some of these classes, like Cleric, for example, is it would add a strength bonus equal to your Charisma modifier. So you would pass Divine Might, it would take your Charisma modifier, add it to your Strength. Now it doesn't do that. Now it just provides a DC bonus equal to 1/2 your Charisma modifier, and War Soul has a version, Divine Will, that now adds 1/2 your Wisdom modifier. So if you were a class that, say, was a strength-based tactics using melee or something, you're basically losing your Divine Might strength bonus. Okay, and because the prior version of Divine Might added a strength bonus, and that's no longer there, this is a nerf for some strength builds. So if you're a strength build, you're going to lose that Charisma modifier to strength. So that's not good, but on the upside, certain trees like Cleric, for example, now has an option to get a DC bonus based on a Charisma modifier, which is nice. But a lot of classes aren't going to really care. They're going to more care about the strength bonus. So it's a nerf for a lot of classes. But for some, it's not. So if you're like a Charisma-based Cleric or something, you can now get a bonus to tactics that you couldn't get before. And before you would have had to, say, splash a Favored Soul level for that. But I would say, yeah, it's overall, it's a nerf for a lot of builds. Okay, next we're going to get into some range combat changes that they made from Preview 1 to Preview 2. A lot of this is, well, really, all this that I'm talking to you about is going live. Went live today. So the biggest complaint from players by far seemed to be to the improved precise shot change. So they basically made it so that you get a minus 20% penalty to your range power when you're using improved precise shot, which is a feat that lets your projectile of your bow or crossbow or whatever go through enemies and hit other enemies in a straight line. So they stuck with their guns to that, but they didn't change that. I mean, they felt that was needed to basically make AoE more desirable with melee classes and two-handed fighting and things. But the main thing people were upset about is that they kind of understood the nerf to Inquisitive in that way, but the problem is it also hit other builds that were not overperforming at all, so like bow builds. So they didn't change into super precise shot, but what they did do is they made some changes to further buff longbows and short bows, which were, according to the developers here, those were areas they were planning to do some work on later in the year. But because there were so many people complaining about it, they went ahead and did the work now and shoved it into this update. And there's probably going to be more, but it seems like they put in just some changes to hopefully make people not too mad about it. So we'll go over those changes here in a second. And they basically in these paragraphs talked about what I've just told you. So here's the changes. Okay, so the big thing is Archer's Focus. They took it and reverted it back to how it is on live before the update. So they were going to change it so that Archer's Focus instead of standing still to gain range power, it would instead reward you for going after single targets. They've now reverted that to, they aren't going to do that anymore. It's now just going to go back to how it always is, how it always was. But they've also buffed it in addition to that. So it returned, as you can see here, Archer's Focus returned to the design functionality it currently has on live, and Archer's Focus has had its range boost increase. So it does more damage, essentially. And another huge buff, the base animation speed for short bow and longbow attacks have been increased by 13%. So that's a big buff, and that's a big change. So that's an additional 13% DPS that those short bow and longbow builds are going to get. The feat shot on the run now grants a 10% alacrity bonus to short bows and longbows. So really the speed seems to be the biggest one there. But again, they're still sticking with the improved precise shot nerf, which is a minus 20% like range power when you have that feat active. So that hasn't changed. They are sticking to their guns on that. Okay, the last big change is a further nerf to Inquisitive. Like, if you're Inquisitive, I mean, this update, there's no bones about it. I mean, this update is a huge nerf, huge sledgehammer nerf to Inquisitive. So Inquisitive, dual crossbow combat style. In preview, it was only using 66% of your double shot, basically 2/3 of your double shot. They further nerfed that to only use 50% of your double shot. So more nerf to Inquisitive DPS. Devs are saying that Inquisitive is still going to be really good. I mean, it's still going to be, they're saying, like somewhere up there in terms of the better DPS builds, but it's just not going to be like ridiculously overpowered as it was. So, I mean, if you're an Inquisitive player, I guess a couple good things that come out of this is you're going to be more of a niche player because there won't be nearly as many people running Inquisitives than there were. So if you're running Inquisitive now, even after the nerfs, then hey, you're going to be a little bit more unique. And you may not feel as cheap, I guess, when you're playing. I don't know how overpowered it really was because I never played it. But I'm sorry, it sucks to get your build nerfed, but the Inquisitive nerfs were definitely needed. I just don't know if they nerf them too much or not. But I guess that's something we will see as players get into this update and explore it and start to test their builds out and start to play it, in those quests that they were before, see if they can still play in the higher difficulty levels that they were playing. So, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Again, everything else that I haven't discussed here, I've covered in prior videos. So definitely, again, watch those videos that are below in the description. So guys, and if you want to look at the release notes, I'll also link those below. They're really long. So that's it, guys. That's gonna be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Have fun. I'm gonna get off here and play update 45. So you guys have a good one. I'll see you next time. Take care.